So we'll get started. Welcome everybody. Anybody here for the first time tonight? Welcome, welcome. Anybody at home here for the first time? Welcome to you. Sorry about where the screen is. I can kind of hide behind it. I'll have to have good posture. I was asking my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, earlier. I didn't quite have anything in mind for topic for tonight, and so what should I teach at my meditation class tonight? And she said, boring, which is kind of just what she always says. But I was like, that's a great topic for us meditators, our relationship to boredom. And a couple of years ago, I got back, I was with my teacher, Ajahn Amaro, for a couple of days this last week. And last time I saw him a couple of years ago in Thailand, he gave a series of talks on the importance of, if you're interested in liberation, if you want to be happy, if you want to be free from suffering, on the importance of learning how to be bored. That actually, if you can't tolerate boredom, then there's no hope for happiness in your life. Right? I mean, you could say that about any topic. If you can't tolerate any aspect of life, and then you'll be unhappy all of the time that aspect of life is happening. So I'm going to explore boredom a little bit tonight, and my sense of boredom, in my own direct experience, is it's connected with neutrality. When things, my mind, my body, my internal or external experience is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Because if I'm in pain, I'm not bored. I might be unhappy. I might be suffering about the pain, the unpleasantness, but I'm not bored. It's engaging. Pain is, gets my attention, not bored. And if it's pleasant, if the mind, the body, the experience that I'm having, I feel entertained, it's pleasant, then I'm not bored. But when it's neutral, when it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant, and this is a core part of the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness, our relationship to pleasure, our relationship to pain, and our relationship to neutrality. And I don't know about you, maybe some of you find pleasure boring. It's like, oh, pleasure again. It's fucking dreary old pleasantness. Maybe some of you find pain boring. But I think it's probably pretty common that what we call boredom is when things are somewhat neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And I want to explore a little bit tonight our mindfulness practice, the Buddha's encouragement to learn to be at peace in the midst of neutrality. So as an intro, before we meditate, I'm in the habit, in the service of connection and in the service of meeting and connecting with other people in the community, whether you're in the room or you're at home on Zoom, having you introduce yourselves to some people, and I sometimes give a little topic of something to talk about as you introduce yourselves, with the intention that the more you come to meditation, the more that you'll start to make connections. And it's a huge part of the Buddhist path. We take refuge in the potential of awakening. We take refuge in the truth, the Dharma, the teachings, the practices that lead to awakening, to freedom. And we take refuge in the community of people that will support us, that will walk this path with. What we're trying to do, if you're trying to practice Buddhism, you're trying to do something that is not popular, it's not mirrored in the world. If you get serious about meditation, it'll be really rare for you to know other people that are serious about meditation if you're not part of a community. Even the Buddhists, even the millions and millions of Buddhists around the world, Very few of them actually meditate out of the billions of religious people that call themselves Buddhists. And so what we're doing of saying like, oh, we want to, not so interested in being Buddhist myself, but I'm very interested in awakening, very interested in how can I train my mind so that even when it's neutral, I'm not suffering about it. How can I learn to be more peaceful in the midst of pain and pleasure and neutrality? And I know I need people in my life, and that we all need people in our lives that support it, that encourage it, that know what the fuck we're talking about. Because you talk to most people about this kind of stuff and they're just, what are you, why are you talking to me about neutrality? What's that mean? So in the service of getting to know your community, whether you choose to be a long-term part of this community or not, you're here tonight in class. So turn to somebody, keeping relative social distance. Don't get right in each other's faces, but you can give each other a few feet of space and talk to each other. Introduce yourself. You don't need to shake hands. You can just talk to each other. And talk to each other, introduce yourself and talk to each other about your relationship to being bored or neutrality in a very concise way. You don't have 10 minutes to give a Dharma talk to your small group. And at home, I will encourage you. I'm going to open up these breakout rooms. And I noticed that maybe a third of the people choose not to go in the breakout rooms. And you're like, this is why I stay home to watch it on Zoom. So I don't have to talk to people and I can just be a voyeur and just watch. I don't want to fucking talk to people I don't know. And that's okay. You can totally do that. But also, I hope that what I'm saying makes sense, that it's part of Buddhism to talk to other meditators, to get to know other meditators, to connect. It's not about just getting good at meditation and just learning and being entertained by a Dharma talk or inspired, but it's about how do we make connections with each other? How do we talk to each other? How do we listen to each other? So if that's not enough of a guilt trip to get you to actually do this, that's okay too. So go ahead, I've opened the rooms for you at home, and you guys can, and try to talk to somebody you don't know already. If you're already here with your friends, maybe talk to somebody you don't know. Settling into an upright posture. Allowing our eyes to be gently closed, bringing our awareness into the body. Releasing any unnecessary tension we may be holding. Softening the face, the brow, the eyes, the jaw. Releasing the shoulders, chest, neck, torso. Breathing in, feel the sensations that the breath creates, the nostrils, chest, belly. Breathing out, softening. Let the belly soften as much as you can. As we establish mindfulness in the body, first foundation of our practice. Do your best to bring an attitude of acceptance, of kindness or friendliness, so that we're receiving the sensations of the breath and body without judgment, without trying to control it, but just to accept it. No need to control the breath in any way. Just let your body breathe. Mindfulness receives and is aware of wherever we direct it. So we start by directing it towards the body breathing. Perhaps your mind will find the simple sensations of breath to be a bit boring. Go looking for something more entertaining in your mind in the future, planning, fantasizing, worrying. In the past, reminiscing, resenting, rehashing. For the first few minutes, gently return your attention to the breath rather than indulging in thought. Come back to the present time experience of sitting, breathing. Increase your tolerance for the boring old breath. We're not trying to stop the brain from thinking, but we are trying to stop paying attention to what the brain is thinking about. Trying to give our full attention to the body, the sensations, the breath coming and going is the focus. Let the thoughts be in the background. Each time you find yourself floating off into future or past, gently returning the attention to the present. Staying with the breath for the whole of the practice tonight as the focus. But explore the feeling tone of the breath itself. Does it feel pleasant? Do you like the sensations of the breath? Is there anything unpleasant about the sensations of breathing? Or does it feel somewhat neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant? Explore that for each half a breath. How does breathing in feel? How does breathing out feel? Spend some time investigating the sensations in your body beyond the breath, the contact with the chair, your posture. Bring mindfulness to the places of discomfort in your body. Anything unpleasant in the back or knees, shoulders. Without moving away from it, just bring your attention to anything that perhaps is uncomfortable in this moment in your body. Becoming aware of the unpleasant feeling tone. And then explore with mindfulness, where's the center, where's the edges, how far does that pain radiate? Down the knee into the calf, or up the back, or down the shoulders. Where's the edge of discomfort, if there's any discomfort? And what sensation is there past the edge? Where's the neutrality? Down in the calves, ankles, out into the arms, sides. Likewise with pleasant sensations, is there pleasure currently in your body? Anything pleasant feeling? Where's the center? Where's the beginning, the middle, the end? And as you bring your attention through your body, how much of the physical sensations in the body right now are perceived as neutral. The mind is drawn towards the pain. But when you pay attention to your arms and legs, torso, back, head and face, directing your attention towards all the parts of your body that are not hurting. Buddhism can seem a little bit complicated if you're new to it, and there's all these lists, Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and the 32 parts of the body and the 7 factors of awakening and the 5 hindrances and the 12 links of dependent origination. And there's all of these, it's a little intimidating when you're new and you're like, what the fuck does all that shit mean? Why is there so many lists? But also, it's really simple. All of those lists are pointing towards their descriptions. They're all descriptions of the way that we human beings create suffering for ourselves. And the way that we can train our mind through meditation, renunciation, to not create so much suffering for ourselves or each other or others. This exploration of our relationship to neutrality and our relationship to boredom, I think primarily comes in what's called the second foundation of mindfulness. When we start meditating and we practice mindfulness of the breath, it's the first foundation. It's like the starting point is use your body to get here, present. Get out of your future planning and past remembering, and bring your full attention to the here and now. In service of once you're here, once you're present with your breath, with your body, with what's happening right now, now that's when the work begins on some level. That's where the transformation can start to take place when you're present. If you're not present, no hope at all for liberation. If you're off in the future, you can never find happiness in the future. In the past, you can never find well-being in the past. Only in the present. So we use the breath, the body, to get present. And then once we're present, a bit present, we explore, what am I feeling? What's my perception of the sensations in my body and my heart and my mind? And are they pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? My sense is that most of us are painfully aware of our relationship to pain. You know how you feel about pain. Buddhism has this kind of maybe a little too, and I like to explore this. I think it's interesting for all of us to explore it. There tends to be this assumption that everybody dislikes pain. That everybody meets unpleasant experience, painful experience with aversion. That's one of the core causes of our suffering, is you hate pain, aversion, resistance. But maybe you can think about some painful experiences that you actually like. Can you think of some? You don't have to name them out loud or anything, but I love to talk about our relationship to spicy food. It's one of my favorite topics. And kind of acknowledge that spicy food, not like hot sauce, is painful. The actual experience of it is your taste buds are being burned. And then, different people, different preferences have different levels of enjoyment around that kind of pain. Some people say, nope, I only want pleasant sensations on my tongue, sweet, salty, only, or I think it's important to acknowledge that when we're talking about the second foundation, your perception of pleasant and unpleasant and neutral, some of the things that you find pleasant might actually be painful. Like, like a good workout. And you're burning. It's actually pain, but you like it. Spicy food, it's actually pain, but you like it. maybe even meditation, and maybe even like, oh, my back is sort of aching, but I feel a sense of accomplishment. I like it.
Like after gym, you have pain in your muscles.
It's pain.
But you understand this muscles.
Right.
Not fat.
Yeah. Which
is pain.
Right. So that there's a feeling of, even with that unpleasant sensation of accomplishment and gains. Pain. What is that? I saw maybe it was a Marines thing or something like that. And it said, pain is weakness leaving the body.
Or if you have pain, like something like a teeth, or you're sick after you're hitting them, oh my gosh, how life beautiful.
When it passes. When it passes, right? Yeah. So there is something about the unpleasantness of existence that we're so grateful for when it's impermanent.
Yeah.
If it is too chronic, if it's too sustained, it becomes so fatiguing. But if it's temporary pain, it's. What about pleasure? Is there any pleasant experiences that you don't like? Like maybe some of you don't like sweets. But it's kind of pleasant, right? Most people would think like, oh, sugar's, it's a pleasant sensation on the tongue. But then some people are like, oh, no, I don't like that kind of, it's too pleasant, or it's too sweet, it's too.
Especially here in America. Oh my God.
Our shit's way too sweet.
Why are you guys eating?
Way too sweet.
Only sugar.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah, we put sugar on our sugar.
Yeah, any flavor, just sugar.
I take my son to get some candy, and instead of getting like some chocolate or something, he's like, I just want that like sugar, stick of sugar that's red or whatever they've done to it. They put a little bit of flavor in it, and it's probably actually fucking corn syrup. It's not even real sugar, but it's so sweet. I wonder about pleasant experiences that you have aversion to. Like something like taking a compliment, receiving, somebody offering, being generous to you, being kind to you, being friendly. A lot of us have this kind of like, oof, I don't like that. It's supposed to be pleasant, right? The attention, love, especially if it's not creepy and it's like actually like appropriate, loving attention. But that there's something about that kind of, I don't find that pleasant at all. That's my self-esteem, my self-worth, my social anxiety, whatever it is like, although you complimenting me is supposed to feel good, and generally people would be like, praise, yeah. It's supposed to inflate the ego, and we're supposed to like it. But sometimes it's like, no, fucking don't talk to me. Stop being nice to me. So you know about your relationship to pleasure and pain on some level, right? But what's your relationship to neutrality? Do you know? And so in our meditation, you learn a lot about your relationship, trying to just be with the breath. How tolerant of just paying attention to the breath and the body, and most of what's happening in the body is probably neutral unless you have some injuries or illness, or even if you're sitting here and your back hurts or your knees hurt or wherever there's some discomfort after 20 minutes or body, some parts of the body, but most likely 80% of your body is not in pain. All of our attention might go to that 10% of our body that's intent, it's like that survival instinct just goes like, wait a minute, there's an ache. Get obsessed with the ache. When, if the tops of my arms aren't aching, my sides aren't aching, the tops of my legs aren't aching, it's just right there. and all of my attention wants to go there, and ignore all of the neutral, not pleasant or unpleasant sensations that the body's experiencing. Could you get a sense in the investigation of your breath, pleasant or unpleasant, the sensations of breathing, as it enters and exits the nostrils? Liking, disliking, neutral? I find it pretty neutral. I mean, I can bring a sort of gratitude and appreciation, like I'm alive, I'm breathing, it's amazing. I'm not dead yet. But I have to sort of manufacture that. Really, I'm just like, oh yeah, breath again. Yep, still breathing. Here it comes again. There it goes. Here it comes. There it goes. A little tickle on the nostrils. Not very pleasant. A little bit boring. A little neutral. So often I'll watch my attention get drawn back into thinking, planning. And where's your planning mind go? Planning for something pleasant in the future? Maybe your planning mind worries something unpleasant is going to happen in the future. Some fantasy. Or to the past. Well, the breath is kind of neutral, not that interesting. But this argument that I had in 1993 is really interesting. It's engaging. I feel passionate about this fight I had 20 years ago. And I would be so much better. I've got the best comebacks now. Well, back then I just froze, whether it was 20 years ago or last week or. So I hope this is, the context of this is making sense. What the Buddha is teaching us, what Buddhism is teaching us, is that it's possible to be at peace. It's possible. If you can tolerate neutrality. And maybe even learn to enjoy it. I still find on some levels, I've gotten better at it over the years, but when I realized this early in my meditation practice, I was like, fuck, I don't know if I can do this because I'm not very good at being bored. And I don't only feel bored around neutrality, I feel aversive to it, maybe even afraid of it, of the quiet moments, I'm so kind of addicted to suffering, so identified with suffering, and so habituated to looking for pleasure, but also I'll settle for pain. I'll sabotage if it's boring. But at the same time, I would have told you, well, if somebody said, well, why are you meditating? I said, well, because I want to experience serenity. I want to experience peace. But when I got just a little taste of peace with paying attention to my breath and body, I was like, oh, I don't like this at all. This is not what I thought it was going to be. This is fucking boring. I thought peace was going to be, I guess I wasn't looking for peace. I was looking for bliss. I was looking for something more intense, a little more extreme than tolerating neutrality. But the more you meditate, the more I've meditated, I'm sure you're having this experience. I'd imagine it's universal. The more you meditate and you learn to just be with the breath, the body, Start identifying like, yeah, there's the pleasant experiences, there's the neutral experiences, there's the unpleasant experiences. And they're all impermanent, they're all coming and going. And a lot of life, I mean, as everybody knows, and most of, a lot of our community recovering from addiction, chasing pleasure, running from pain is, a kind of guaranteed recipe for making it worse, for creating more and more suffering. And then we get sober or we come to meditation for whatever reason. Not everybody is coming out of an addiction, but some dissatisfaction, some seeing the dead end of chasing pleasure and running from pain and waking up to like, it's fucking impossible. I can't sustain pleasure. I can't avoid pain. I don't even know what neutrality is. I think a lot of people, when we come here, but then we start meditating and we start to become more intimate with the reality of these second foundations, some pleasant, some unpleasant. And then a lot of life becomes neutral when you stop trying to control and manipulate and avoid and start being with yourself as you are. Hopefully, I mean, maybe in the early stages, it's like, no, it's still mostly painful. My mind is abusive, all of that. But you'll get to a place if you keep meditating where it's like your mind's not so abusive anymore. More and more comfortable in your own skin. And then it's, oh shit, how do I live with the reality that being at peace isn't that fun? I mean, compared to suffering, it's very desirable. It's very, like this is, even sometimes the Buddha talks about his enlightenment. He's like the bliss of liberation. Even though pain continues, even though neutrality can, it's not pleasurable all of the time, but in comparison, in contrast to the suffering of clinging and aversion, and it's blissful to be at peace, but it's not necessarily pleasant. It's not necessarily fun. I know I have a strong tendency towards wanting to have fun. And I do a lot of intentional activities that I think are fun to create pleasant sensations, whether it's motorcycles or cars or bicycles or skateboards or surfing or playing poker. Like there's just all of these activities that like I like to do. They're fun. Listening to music, going to movies, shows, just like all of the entertainment. Like I like it. It's pleasant. And I spent a lot of my life, as most of us do, looking for it, seeking what's, as a recovering person, what's sober, healthy, appropriate, fun. But then I've spent all of this time in my adult life too, meditating, going on meditation retreats, anywhere from 3-day retreats to 10-day retreats to month-long retreats. I once did a 90-day retreat, 3-month silent meditation retreat, and it was terribly boring. Some of it. But then also the more mindful, the more concentrated, the more present I got. Sometimes I'd be doing walking meditation a month in, 2 months in, and be like, this is so fucking interesting. I'm just not doing anything. I'm just walking back and forth or just sitting here for another hour out of the, 7-hour-long meditations a day that we're doing. But it became, mindfulness itself made it not boring, but interesting. And I think, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that boredom is having a neutral experience and craving for it to be pleasant? Is that when you're bored? It's neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but then the craving kicks in. I want this to be more interesting, more fun, more pleasant than it actually is. I'm bored. Craving. Or the flip side, and it's maybe the same thing, is it's neutral and I don't like it. Aversion. It's quiet. It feels foreign. It feels maybe vulnerable. It's a little too peaceful in here, a little too comfortable. The sabotage, the aversion to. When you're bored, do you mostly go looking for pleasure or sometimes go looking for trouble? And, you know, a bunch of degenerates in our community. So we can be honest. So it all comes down probably to the cause of boredom is the same thing as the cause of every kind of suffering that we have. The second noble truth, the Buddha's teaching, his experience, that all of our dissatisfaction, all of our unhappiness, all of our suffering has a root cause in something that's not your fault. That's not, you know, that's just the natural human survival instinct, which shows up as repetitive craving. And because we all have this instinctual, repetitive craving, second noble truth, it makes neutrality often for us show up as boredom. And part of the task of the second noble truth is to relinquish craving, is to not take it so personal, not be so reactive to when your mind is saying this is boring, do something. And say like, no, this is neutral and I'm just going to hang out with it. People often say, well, but don't you think it's getting worse with technology? And I don't know, you know, the Buddha said this against the stream teaching and statement from the Buddha 2,600 years ago. He said, in this generation of degenerates that are so addicted to pleasure, so aversive to pain, so self-centered, he's like, I don't know if liberation, like who's going to actually be willing to be bored and be mindful? So it's so counter to the culture, to the human nature. And so he's saying this 2,600 years ago, where there's like people meditating everywhere and there's no fucking cell phones. And you have to be more creative about your entertainment. It does feel like I see it in myself, so quick to like, you know, waiting for something rather than just sitting around waiting at the car wash, or so quick to just be like, well, I guess I got 5 minutes. Rather than just sitting here and being with my own mind for 5 minutes, I think I'll check out what's going on Instagram. And that constant going back to social media or checking our email or texting someone or looking outside of ourselves and avoiding. And then you sit down to meditate. And I think for a lot of people, meditation is the only time of the day that we're not looking outside, that we're not on the phone, on the computer, or listening to music, watching TV, engaging in some conversation with other people, where we finally stop for however long you meditate daily, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 5 minutes, however long it is, you sit and you say, I'm going to give myself my full attention. And this is necessary. And if, of course, always the context, if you'd like to be truly free, we have to learn to be at ease in the midst of pain when life is painful, how to be at ease in the midst of pleasure when life is pleasurable without clinging to it and just, turning it into suffering, and how to be at ease when life is neutral. The mind, the body, the environment is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And I like that Ajahn Amaro, rather than saying like, well, if you're truly mindful, you'll never be bored, there's that humility that just acknowledges none of us are mindful enough to never be bored. That the reality is, because the second noble truth, because the repetitive craving is driving humanity, and we're part of that, you're going to be bored. So learn to be bored, learn to tolerate boredom without so quickly going to get rid of it. Learn to just be like, okay, here I am, and it's not very pleasant, and I'm just going to sit with that. Here I am, and it's not very painful. I'm going to try to appreciate the absence of pain. And that's one of the reasons why in our meditation, so important to look for the places that don't hurt. Because your mind wants to go to what's wrong, survival instinct, what hurts. What doesn't hurt? Let that be a big part of your investigation, big part of your mindfulness. What doesn't hurt right now? What is neutral? What sensations can I feel, can I perceive? And the breath tends to be a really good object of awareness for that. I was reminded recently about a story that Ajahn Sumedho, my teacher's teacher, tells about how he was a fairly new monk in the monastery with Ajahn Chah, his teacher. And they went in for the Dharma talk. And sometimes in the monasteries, how sometimes even here, you're an hour and 15 minutes in, you're starting to get bored. Starting to think about like, oh shit, how much longer do I have to listen to this shit? And the monastery, sometimes the Dharma talks are 3 hours or 4 hours, and they just go on and on and on. And there's a level of respect and commitment that you can't leave, especially if you're a monk. Like, you can't leave. You're in it. You're going to sit there for 4 hours. But usually, you're also going to get these amazing talks, and you're going to be interested and inspired, and 4 hours is a lot, no matter how good it is. But Sumedho was talking about this one time when he went in, and Ajahn Chah had another senior monk there, and they just sat and so you're all here and you can't leave. And I'm just talking to my friend for 3 hours, not even giving you a talk. And you can't leave because it would be so disrespectful. And Sumedho was talking about how impatient and how bored, and then all of the rage that came, and just these waves of how could he do this to us? Mm-hmm. And then 2 hours in, and then 3 hours in, starting to go oh wow, what an interesting fit my mind has been having, and what a great teaching this is, that I'm just captive here, and I'm just being patient and tolerant. And by the time the talk was given, he was like, that was amazing that I got to investigate my relationship to expectation and entitlement, and being bored, not being entertained, not being inspired, not getting what I expected. what I thought I signed up for. There's another monk, actually Ajahn Amaro, when I was with him last week, he was telling this story about how in the tradition, the Dharma talks can be a bit hit or miss, like me, I'm sure, because, and I really identify with these guys, where it's forbidden to prepare what you're going to teach. Like you're allowed to come up with a topic, like, and which is what I do. I kind of ask my daughter, what should I talk about tonight? She's like, boredom. Like, okay, let's see what comes out. I've got the topic, let's see what comes out. And so sometimes it's quite good and interesting. But sometimes like, there's not that much. And so Amaro was talking about how Ajahn Pasano, who's a senior monk, he said one time Ajahn Pasano got up there to give the talk and everyone's gathered. And he sat there and kind of closed his eyes and he sat there and everybody's waiting. Okay, we're waiting for the talk. Then he just opened his eyes and he said, I got nothing. I'm not going to sit here and fake it and try to talk about something that I don't feel moved, and inspired. So I just got nothing. And that was it. And just like, okay, no talk tonight because I don't feel like it. And Amaro was saying, like, I just appreciated the integrity and the sincerity of being able to show up and then not perform. Anyways, I'm going on tangents now. Open to questions, comments. What's your experience with your relationship neutrality? How's it changing? Are you aware of it? Is this part of your practice? I hope it is. I hope if it hasn't been, that it will be a central part of your investigation. Any questions about this or anything else online, you can raise your hand, or in the room, you can raise your hand.
I have a question.
Tex, go ahead.
So I've noticed for me, I try to focus on the breath, and it seems like my thoughts just continue to hijack my ability to just focus on the breath. And I try to be kind and compassionate to that fact, but the racing thoughts, I can't shed them. I'm really struggling with that.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to, maybe some other things I could focus on outside of just the breath, maybe, or?
It's I don't know if you could hear him at home. He was saying that trying to be with the breath, but that the racing thoughts and the kind of hijack the ability to be with the breath. And do I have any suggestions or other practices maybe? Mostly, my encouragement is just to accept that that's part of the process and to not try to do something else, or and on some level to remember that the context is we're not trying to stop the thoughts. And I like the way you were saying hijack, because there's one image, I don't know if you've heard it yet, where part of what we're doing is we're, in the third foundation, when we're with the breath, you're in the first foundation, you are trying to ignore your mind. But then in third foundation, you're no longer ignoring it, you're just watching it. And there's an image that's used sometimes of like you're watching the train of thoughts. And you're just sitting there and you're watching like, oh, look at them race by. Planning, remembering, hoping, fearing, lusting, judging, hating, loving, whatever thoughts are passing by. With a, unentangled awareness of like, that's just what the mind does. And the image of the attention, we want the attention to be like by the side of the tracks, observing, not hijacked or like kind of taken on a ride down the tracks. But of course, it's just what, our attention is so habituated to being identified with what the mind is doing. Now I'm thinking, I'm not observing the mind, I'm thinking about that argument from 93. Okay, Non-judgmental thinking, acknowledge it, come back. The definition of mindfulness is non-judgmental present time awareness. So what you're aware of is a breath or two, and now I'm aware of thinking. No judgment, thinking, but I'm going to choose to come back to the breath. And I feel a breath or two, maybe 3 or 4 breaths, and then planning. Oh, now I'm in planning again. Come back. Get off the train, come back. Now I feel 1 breath gone again, 2 breaths gone again, 5 breaths gone. But that's just the process. So mostly like you just persevere, you just keep coming back to the breath. And at some point you'll break your addiction to your mind. You'll still get hijacked sometimes, but it'll become less and less, and you'll take it less personal. But especially this context that we're not trying to stop the thoughts. Trying to stop your mind from thinking makes as much sense as trying to stop your heart from beating. Not quite, that's a little extreme, because stopping your heart from beating would actually kill you. Stopping your thoughts would be pleasant. But I use that analogy because pay attention to what's going on here. Your heart beats all by itself. Your lungs breathe all by themselves. And you don't take it that personal, right? Like you're just like, I'm breathing. Heart's beating. I'm not over here going like, yep, that's me. I'm making my heart beat. Just beats all by itself. As it turns out, the same thing is true with our brains. They think all by themselves. And it's not so personal, and it's not your fault. It's just part of this organism is that you have, our organs that digest and process, and you have a heart that beats, and you have lungs that breathe. And the brain's job is to think. And part of it is fueled by this craving and aversion, and it's not your fault. It's not personal. Meditation's not going to be a lobotomy that all of a sudden like gets rid of all the unpleasant thoughts. It just gives you awareness of, what my mind does. It plans and it judges and it lusts and it fears and it. That's not who, it gives that awareness of, I get some choice. I said breaking our addiction to the mind. Knowing that you and I are recovery people, like if you're addicted to substances, you can practice abstinence. So think of your relationship to the mind like a food addiction. You can't stop eating. You can't stop thinking. What you can do, and what the Buddha suggested, was be mindful enough that you start to identify what are wholesome thoughts and what are unwholesome thoughts. You develop discernment of what thoughts are trustworthy and worth contemplating, and what is just junk food and not worth eating, and renounce the sugar and the flour and the stuff that, like, your bottom line recovery is, I don't feed hatred in my mind. I don't feed lust in my mind. I don't feed those thoughts. They're going to still come, but I'm not going to indulge in them, or I'm going to try not to. I hope that's helpful. Mostly it's just like you just keep coming back, and everybody's lost in thought most of the time. And then the longer you meditate, the more you're here and less lost. Yeah. Yeah. Please, Tara.
Well, I was a high school English teacher, and I did try to sort of avoid boredom with the students because they would turn on you, and I didn't want to be boring. And so, like, for example, when we would read Lord of the Flies, I would skip all the descriptions of the scenery and everything and try to cut to the more exciting parts, but at least get something from it, and then I thought about like all the things that I do to avoid boredom, like whether it's going to see a play that's really good as opposed to something that for some people would enjoy, like an action-packed thing, but I would just think that's so repetitive just to see fight scene after fight scene. And so it's different for each person. But a lot of times, like anger or fighting, like Fight Club was really great. The fighting or the sex, if it's really intense, could be really wonderful, but it's how it's done too. So, and then I think also seeking out any sense pleasure, whether it's a good taste, but it has to be something new, right, and different. And even like that addiction is like wanting to push something to a little more intensity. Like you don't just want that child's birthday party, all the parents are sitting there getting smashed, drinking, because the repetitive thing of just watching them play pin the tail on the donkey for an hour is like too much, or hearing like people brag about their job or something. So you have to just like, or that work meeting, if you could possibly like be drinking in it, wouldn't it be better, or something, or the stimulant drug to just take it to a little bit more euphoric level of something, rather than the concert just be even more intense. And so, but even that, like after time, if you keep doing the same behavior and over, that starts to be a little bit boring, because not only doesn't it have the effect, but you've repeated it, so it's the same thing. And it's like, also when you start having health problems, you have to pull back from doing that drug so much, and so it's a less intense level. But so I do think, like in a certain sense, like life and health, you're trying to chase that pleasure and away from boredom. But do you think that's good? But I do appreciate, like you're saying, the breath, you have to bring something to appreciating the breath. And my late husband, Michael, did die of a lung disease. So I started really appreciating breath. But I like, sometimes I can get bored by meditation and watching the breath, but sometimes I can get past that and kind of appreciate that and enjoy it. So what is your thought on chasing after pleasure or intensity, or also, and how that applies to meditation? Should we try to appreciate it or stay in more of the neutral place?
My sense is that it's so important to get good, skilled at being able to be bored, to not be addicted to entertainment and pleasure, and that when we do, and the more we meditate, the more we get good at that, the more retreats we go on, the more we give ourselves over to, a lot of the time I'm willing to just be with what is naturally, without intoxicants, without extreme sports, without my phone, without, just with ourselves as the mind is. Incredibly important. The more we do that, then no problem, enjoying the concert or the extreme sports or the delicious food or the sweets or spicy or whatever, as long as we can also be without it. As long as it's a bit like, yeah, I really like doing that, but I don't need to do it. And just because you like doing it doesn't mean that you have to stop doing it. Now, when it comes to like the drugs and alcohol examples that you're using, if you've crossed the line into addiction, then actually that's just dead end, causes more suffering. But even if you haven't crossed the line into addiction, it's still a waste of time to be chasing that kind of intoxicated pleasure, because you can't be mindful. You can't develop the non-attachment that you want to develop, that we need to develop when you're intoxicated. And so this is why the Buddha's teaching was this path of training the mind is a sober path, and that it can't be done by those who are not practicing abstinence, was his teaching. So I think that that's, in support of what we're doing. But then there's nothing wrong with enjoying life, wholesome pleasures. I'll take one last question from Kay, and then we'll end there.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. Because it's funny that this is the topic, because I've actually been pondering boredom for a little while, and my life has been drama free for some time, and I like it. This is what I've been aiming for. And I was aware of how sort of like sometimes discontent I am with it. But if everything really is just a relationship to the experience, right? Do we have the choice to, do these normal mundane things that we do and just choose to, find it interesting, have this, choose to create a relationship one way or the other with it. Like when I'm in a great mood, riding a bike is like a freaking roller coaster ride. Whoa, I'm having fun and woo, I'm riding a bike. When I'm not in a great mood, riding a bike is like a slog, like motherfuck, I have to pedal all the way from A to B, right? That's a pain in the ass. So isn't it? So what is wagging the dog here? Is it our relationship to just these general experiences? When I'm not outside looking for outside experiences to fill and entertain my day with whatever, or other people to fill and entertain my day. When I'm just with me, I'm walking, I'm riding a bike, I'm looking at a flower. Is it my choice to choose how I want to relate to that experience that will create my happiness, boredom, or sadness? Or is it the other way around? That's my question.
My sense is that with long-term training of the mind, it becomes our choice. But without long-term training of the mind in deep mindfulness, we don't have that much choice. It's just, we're reactive. Yes, it's our relationship to what's happening, not what's happening, right? That's what it's not what's happening. It's how we're relating to what's happening. That is the truth. That's the ultimate truth. It's possible to be at peace in the midst of pain if you've deeply trained your mind to be compassionate towards pain. But until you've deeply trained your heart and mind in compassion, you just hate pain and you suffer about it. And you don't get to choose to be like, well, this is really painful, but I'm choosing not to suffer about it. It's, so we can't fake choose. It's not a choice until it's a choice. And it's not a choice for most of us until somewhere down, in certain moments, you'll get that sort of ability to choose, but to have consistent ability to not suffer about what's happening is going to take most of us a long time. And I'll end with somebody asked this is one of my favorite quotes. Somebody asked the Dalai Lama, well, how long is it going to take? And he said something like, I don't know, but your impatience is part of the problem. And if you commit deeply to your meditation practice, to your study, to your renunciation, to this path, check in on your progress once every decade or so. Meditate every day. Practice the 5 precepts. Participate in Sangha. Make connections with other people. Do Buddhism. And then in 10 years, look at yourself and say, am I suffering less now that I've been meditating every day for a decade? And then when you're 20 years in, do I have more choice? I have more equanimity? Do I have more loving kindness, more compassion? 30 years in. And look at your practice over the decades. Now, what's true is that if you don't have a somewhat disciplined, consistent practice, you're not going to magically have more ability to choose. It comes from disciplined training. It's just like working out or something else. If you go to the gym all of the time, you're going to get in really good shape. If you meditate all of the time, you're going to get in really good spiritual shape of the ability to choose how you're responding to what's happening. But just because you know that that's an ultimate possibility doesn't mean you're there yet. Just because you know it's possible to lift 500 pounds because you saw somebody do it on TV doesn't mean you can lift 500 pounds because you're not there yet. If you really want to lift 500 pounds, maybe you can work out every day for the next decade and maybe you'll get there. Hope that makes sense. We'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you for your practice, and this perspective is offered for your reflection, your contemplation. And, dig in deep, look at your relationship to neutrality and boredom, and maybe do some practice this week. That's just do some boring shit. Hang out with it, see how it goes. When instead of grabbing the phone, just breathe. And I'm out of town for a week, but I'll be back next Monday in time for class. So I'll see you next Monday if you come through. Class is done by donation. $15 or $20 donation is suggested for the drop-in class on Monday. Online, there is a link to the website for donations. Please give generously. If you're here, you can donate cash into the bowl, or you can do the Venmo app. Tara will be at the desk. There's also new, last week I showed the new Against the Stream. This is the new Dharma Punx shirt. We have t-shirts and sweatshirts. Your purchase of this merch supports the center too. So consider getting a new swag for yourself. And we'll leave it there for tonight. May any goodness that comes from our practice be shared outward in all directions with all living beings. May each one of us experience liberation. And together may we create a positive change on this planet. Good to see everybody.